Three, two, one. Hey, everybody. This is David Bloom with Next TMT and this here podcast, Next TMT Talks, with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, and our special guest this week, Chris Keevill of Versos AI, whose technology underpins CuriosityStream's somewhat unexpected new revenue stream, making its product, its content available for training large language models. We'll talk about that and a lot of other AI related stuff. To kick things off, we'll dive further into the implications of Paramount Skydance's sudden victory in the Warner sweepstakes late last week, and whether losing is winning, winning is losing, or some of the possible second order effects now that they have a winner and they're moving forward. Elsewhere, the Trump administration wages war on whether Anthropic will help it wage war. Microdramas are grabbing more attention than even Netflix. Charter gets to rename itself Cox in the weirdest naming decision since HBO Max, while home entertainment as a whole seems to be maturing nearly as fast as Dan, as the streaming world and linear increasingly overlap. As Formula One revs up for a new season beginning next weekend, multiple TV deals are in place to make it more available and enticing for U.S. fans than ever. And finally, Court TV gets a new jailer, or bailiff, I suppose we should call it, as it sold a Jelly Smack unit, Law and Crime. With that, let's start. Hello, Chris, from the wilds of Nova Scotia. Thanks to the wonders of streaming technology, which we all love and adore and talk about endlessly, you are with us. Happy to have you. Tell us a little bit about Versos.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you, David. And Dan, good to see you again. A little bit about Versos. Well, this business of helping studios monetize archive data from their hard drives to AI companies looking to train models is an emerging marketplace. It didn't exist 12, 18 months ago, and it's growing like crazy. Versos plays, we think, an important role in this burgeoning marketplace by acting as infrastructure to support the supply chain from those studios to the buyers who are hyperscalers, OpenAI, Anthropic, in the news today, along with, of course, Google, Meta.
Interesting.
So
So,
we,
what you pipeline into what all the big, there's, I guess, four really big ones, but others doing lots of niche stuff. So, who's buying what you're selling?
well, our relationship is predominantly on the supply side. So if I were to use a real estate analogy, we are a seller's agent. We are a selling agent. So we represent the sellers, the studios, the owners and right holders of this content.
Now, you came out with an announcement last week. You'd been working with CuriosityStream, I guess, since last year.
Yeah,
They announced, shocked the world and said, hey, we made about nearly $90 million that
yeah,
we didn't make before off
yeah.
the web.
Found money.
Found
Found
money
money.
And
under the
now you're taking it out wide to the broader video entertainment industry.
Yeah, found money in the cushion, so to speak. And so CuriosityStream is our partner who take the video data sets to market. It's their relationships with the buy side.
So, CuriosityStream, you've got basically a proof of concept. This is how it's working, and we're seeing real money from it, which is great because as they spend hundreds of billions of dollars to build out data centers and all that, it would be nice to see if there's actually some revenue for somebody besides, oh, I don't know, the guys making electrical switches and nuclear plants. In terms of what the opportunity here is, I guess what Lionsgate's got to deal with Runway, if I recall. OpenAI has a very different deal with Disney, but we don't have a lot of studio deals with anybody, right? They're still kind of like, I don't know, we got a guild contract that's really scary and stuff like that.
That's right. And then so if you think about those tier A studios, they clearly have the opportunity to do a direct deal with a model builder. But mid-tier and small independent studios with 10,000 hours in their archive, 5,000 hours in their archive, that's where we come in. So we work with aggregators of that studio content, and we take a video file and we prepare it for training through a processing pipeline using AI ourselves to prepare that video into a data set.
There's a
Wait,
couple you have
go
to
ahead,
use.
Dan.
It's nonfiction programming for the most part, right? And you have to
Uh,
own 100% of the IP for it.
It's a range. No, it's a range of content types. We've seen data set deals with everything from unscripted documentary to episodic TV programming, CATV film, camera sitting on the corner of a tennis court running 724 creating video is all trainable video.
Some of this feels like this is like the next logical step for library owners after the fast networks blew up and are now they're kind of at a steady state. They're not adding a whole lot more. They're getting more sophisticated at what they're doing. They're wrapping more ads around it in a smarter way. But then we're not adding a whole lot more of that. So if you have, I don't know, 10,000 hours of Westerns, what are you going to do with it? Well, this might be a thing, right? It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, there's real value in the video archives. And look, I don't think it ends there either because the demand for training data is insatiable. You mentioned the money being invested in data centers. We're going to build those data centers next to hydroelectric plants, or we're going to build them in space, but we're going to put trillions of dollars into the development of these data centers. They're going to draw a lot of power and they're going to draw a lot of data. So the demand for data to train the models, we anticipate will go on for some time. Eventually, the archives in every hard drive and tape drive that's laying around out there in Tupperware containers or storage units, that will be exhausted and trained on in time. And the models will look to commission new, very bespoke video to be created. They will want 10,000 hours of a woman with red nail polish tying her shoes. But we're going to have to go and create some of that content. So there's opportunity for the film and production industry to be commission source data sets.
So, I mean, that's sort of like crossing stock photography
Yeah,
with library owners in whatever. I mean, it's interesting that that would be a thing to have 10,000 more hours of a woman putting on makeup or whatever.
that's right. That's right.
But fascinating that that's an opportunity. So I guess I need to get my camera out to the tennis court and
Yeah, yeah. Or just
do
strap a
wildlife
GoPro
trap camera.
strap a GoPro to your head while you're playing tennis. So there's a few challenges. If you think about this emerging market, it's quite asymmetrical. Very few buyers at the top of the market, and almost infinite distribution of supply. If you think about where video sits in the world,
Right.
the first generation of models were trained on language. They're called large language models for a reason. They were trained predominantly on text. The next generation of models you can think of as being referred to as world models. So they want to develop the first AGI models. They want to have much broader use cases than the current use cases of LLMs. And you can't take the model out into the world. You've got to bring the world to the models. And the only way to do that is through video. And they'll want everything in the world to train on eventually. So the demand is going to grow. It's not going to go away.
Let's talk about the business a little bit, how it's structured. I know CuriosityStream was kind of subletting. They had deals with these LLMs, and they were letting content owners outside hop aboard their arrangement. That's how it was described by Laura Martin.
That's right.
Where do you fit in? How do you structure your deals? Are you independent of CuriosityStream? Are you working with them?
We're independent of CuriosityStream, although they've made an investment in the business. We're venture funded. We've got institutional venture backing that has got us through this startup phase. But to answer your question, you're right. They're a right holder themselves, and they have partnered with other rights holders, and they aggregate their catalogs with other catalogs to build these very large data sets. We're the infrastructure that processes that data and turns it into a data set. So we take a large file that is an unstructured piece of data. And when you add video files on top of each other and call it a collection or a library, you've just got a very large unstructured data set. In order to train on it, you've got to add the structure. You've got to add metadata, tagging, and labeling. You've got to be able to describe what's inside the video that looks inside a video and itemizes, if you will, everything in every scene, in every frame, whether it's objects or audio. And we catalog everything that's happening inside that video, which then makes that unstructured file very structured and searchable. So if the model is training on nature and wildlife footage, then some level of structure is required to identify a nature wildlife film from something that isn't nature and wildlife. That's the simplest example.
So how much handholding does that require? Do you have to hire a
Right, that-
contract a consultant or sort of staffer out to work with their group and walk them
yeah,
through the metadata process and all that?
well, no, we don't have any people involved. This is all AI generated annotation of the video. So we're a small team of people with very deep tech. And what I just described, identifying a video as falling into the category of nature and wildlife, isn't particularly hard. But what type of nature and wildlife is it? Is it ocean? Okay, that's a level of extraction down. Is it a file about whales? Okay, so now you've got this video file understood. But what
You
about
start
what?
to get this taxonomy though of what it
Yeah,
is, and you getting more and more precise for that. But it's handled basically somebody at CuriosityStream gives you a link and it gets inhaled by the machine, which goes and understands what it's seeing. That's the crucial part here. It
that's the crucial.
understands what it's seeing and then classifies it a million different ways, probably in some sort of very complicated matrix of different kinds of classifications overlaid in n-dimensional space or something, right?
You're 100% right. It's hundreds of dimensions. So a dimension that we're looking for would be whaleness in a scene, right? Oceanness is a dimension, right?
Vegas, by the way, Chris, I just want to point out, Vegas very much into the whaleness of things,
That's right. That's
particularly if
right.
they can wring some more money
Yeah,
out of the whaleness of you.
yeah. Yeah. So what's really cool is as the model builders want to fine tune their models, they want to get very good at very specific things, and to do that, they've got to find the example I used before, women tying the shoelaces. But within a very large library, okay, or what Versos does is it connects libraries. So we are a library network. So there is CuriosityStream's library with multiple collections, and then there are other libraries also processed in the same way across a common data schema. Now, the model builder can look across libraries for scenes with, an example would be white wedding balloons. Well, there's no video file about white wedding balloons, but there's white wedding balloons within files. We look across libraries, across collections, and through the videos in those collections and find the scenes that have in them white wedding balloons because we understand whiteness, we know what a wedding's about, and we can define what a balloon is. So we find those white wedding balloon scenes and create segments with those.
I'm thinking Herman Melville would have loved you guys because he could have defined whiteness and whaleness
You're
and
so Da-
dickness. I just
David.
want to say,
David, you're kind of locking in on the whales here, aren't you? You really love.
well,
You missed that.
they're kind of hard to miss.
So without
Just
giving away
saying.
sensitivities, what happens next? Are we going to see a flurry of
No,
Yes.
we
big?
want to get into sensitivities here. You may not, but we do because at NTech Fest this week, we talked about this some at our midweek Media Play News podcast. But the big Hollywood mocker, Ken Zifrin, major entertainment lawyer connected to everybody in town, is optimistic, cautiously optimistic, shall we say, nervous. He said AI won't be the cause of another set of strikes by Hollywood. Nobody has filed a complaint by any of the guilds against any of the big studios about inappropriate use of AI. But he says, I also know everybody's using it and experimenting in lots of ways from pre-production to post-production and everything in between and marketing and distribution and all the rest. Things could happen, but the real issue is all the people that are not signatories. It's the smaller fry that aren't signatories to the contracts and what happens and where things go.
Right. So a big part of the process is the data rights management. So what we refer to as the chain of custody from the rights holder all the way through the supply chain is tracked in our platform. So the first thing we do is apply what's called a C2PA certificate to the file. So we create a manifest around this file. And if the file is broken up, we create manifests for the piece parts that are created so that the rights holder can track where the file goes and be compensated appropriately. And this is where the Robin Hood play comes in, where all these independent film studios with otherwise dormant archives can monetize those in a new revenue stream. But to
So
do it
instead of a
safe,
manifest, it's more like a mini fest, right?
okay, yeah, no, it's if you like, it's a manifest.
Yeah, but the point is you're creating a breadcrumb trail.
Yeah,
back
that's right. Yeah,
to the source material. How many thousands of hours have you guys managed to process and get into the giant AI maw?
hundreds of thousands of hours, and
Hundreds of thousands of hours.
we have a pipeline with probably 7-8 million hours in our pipeline to process into the
Still to
platform.
go. You still
Still,
have
still to go, and it's not the time frame. And when I say pipeline, it's just a commercial pipeline. The
right, right.
time to process scales in the cloud, so we could process it. Technically, we could process it very fast, but
But at
it
what cost?
yeah, this is a new business. That's not even the cost. It's really the understanding the legal and rights management for a lot of these large library holders. There's business implications that they want to work through, and for many of them, they're hearing about it for the first time in November last year. So
Right.
it's expected to move very
This
quickly.
isn't any different than what the music industry went
Mm,
through with
absolutely.
streaming
And,
of
and
music rights, 'cause, music rights are even more bizarre and fractured and poorly tracked and broken up into multiple things than movies and TV shows, and they went through a whole lot of stuff and a whole lot of fighting and litigating and everything else to
mhm,
get to it. So
mhm.
we're kind of in that stage is what I'm hearing from you. There's a whole bunch of stuff that could be in there, but it has a bunch of boxes that need to get checked first.
Yeah,
How did you get into this? What was the how did you identify the opportunity? Where were you? What was the point of origin here?
well, the point of origin for me personally was the first time I saw Midjourney. If you're not familiar with Midjourney, it's
Oh, yeah.
generative AI, art creator. And it kind of blew me away. I think it really blew a lot of people away because it wasn't deemed before that to be possible. And then along come the transformer models applied against this, and then in their case, it was Stable Diffusion's model, and it was just so cool. And my background is in creative media and media tech and ad tech, so I started to think about where the opportunities might come. I partnered with a brilliant data scientist who understood the art and the science behind these models. And we started with a very simple thesis, which was as the pile of unstructured visual assets grows, the discoverability and searchability within that pile is going to become increasingly difficult. So let's find, that's how we started to look at video intelligence as something to build. We spent 2 years, I'll say, in the lab, which was kind of project based, just trying to refine how we orchestrate various models and how we build this tech without, I'll be honest, without a clear view of how we would commercialize it, but thinking, well, there will be an opportunity here. And the first thing we started to explore was applying our video intelligence platform, which was then quite capable at discovering objects within video libraries. We started to work with some studios around essentially helping them understand what they've got in their library and inside their catalogs. And it was, well, I guess we're almost March, but it was early February. Yeah, it was this. I mean, last year, I met with one of our key partners, a studio partner that was using our video intelligence platform. And he said, crazy thing happened over Christmas. I said, what happened? He said, well, I got a call. Somebody wanted to license the my video archives to train models. And that was literally the first I'd heard about this happening. And so we started to meet with a number of players in the space and looking at ways that we could apply our tech into that use case. And we've just built layers and layers of functionality to serve this it's a purpose-built application that we've created now on that core tech.
So CuriosityStream is just the one we know about at this point.
CuriosityStream, more than that. I mean, CuriosityStream, they are by and large the innovators in this space, both mainly in terms of bringing a professional discipline to the market because they're publicly traded, they're experienced operators, and importantly, they have a premium library. And those three things combined make them the go-to for Silicon Valley model builders. They're just quality people, professional
Yeah.
operators. They're media people, right? They're not, they just know this space. They're trusted by their studio partners. This is also important. Like a studio who is entrusted and trusted CuriosityStream with display rights, it's not such a big leap to then trust them with data training rights. So they're really in a great position, and they've just been a tremendous partner. They've been, courageous in working with us and in kind of opening up the opportunities around how far we can process this data to make it even more valuable to the data trainers. And so we work in collaboration with CuriosityStream and their customers, the model builders, on defining the art of the possible around processing video into data sets in very specific and particular ways.
I think we got a pretty good idea of the business here. Let's pivot. There was this little $110 billion or so deal this week, which may have some minor impacts down the road here and there. I'm sort of curious any thoughts you may have as a vendor into Hollywood. When two of the biggest studios in Hollywood merge, there are second order impacts. And I think I'm of the opinion that Netflix dodged a bullet in not taking on all that stuff because specifically, and I wrote about this in Forbes and here on Next TMT, AI is coming and the cost of video production is plummeting, and the ability to control the means of production of new films and TVs will drop, and the cost to do it will drop as people like what you're doing make the AI smarter and better. So if you spend 80 billion or 100 billion, whatever that final number ends up being on old assets, good for training, right? But
Yeah.
not necessarily leaving you in a place to take advantage of what AI has to offer going forward. So any thoughts about where companies maybe should be thinking about investing their capital without even being on David Ellison?
Look, I think that it's a bit confusing to look at the economics of this deal.
Mm.
Confusing media deals have been happening. Warner Brothers was owned by.
Mostly involving Warner Brothers.
Yeah, exactly. It was 2002. I think Warner Brothers was acquired for about a week and a half by AOL.
Yeah, right.
So the value is in the catalog, right? The value is in the content and their ability to generate new great content. The distribution of that content and how they monetize it, that's been changing 40 years, and and the acceleration of that change is only increasing. So look, I think it's going to be the same story over again. Who is better at monetizing the catalog and who's better at creating great new content? So there would seem to be enough scale in both Paramount and Time Warner, but apparently not the case because some of their core businesses are shrinking. The linear TV business, the cable TV business is boat anchor on both of those stocks.
Boat
Given
anchor.
the ore in your backdrop, I think you know a little bit about anchors, by the way. So that Nova Scotia maritime sensibility. But yeah, it can drag. And so if that's your big source of cash still, but it's fading and you haven't fully made that transition to figuring out the next thing, and you have these guild contracts, I think it's going to be a very interesting time for whoever takes over.
The simplest way to
In
say it would
terms
be,
of what's
I,
next, though, should
yeah,
they call you? Should they call you,
yeah.
Chris?
No, well, not just me, but I think media companies have got to become technology companies, and they've got to become more than just AI enabled. They've got to become AI empowered companies. They've got to make the shift, and whoever can make it fastest is quickest is going to be the winner here. So
To
that's
me,
going
that
to
was
take.
the winning aspect of the Netflix deal. It is a great library from HBO to Looney Tunes, and you have a company that's proven itself to be adaptable and innovative.
Yeah,
Say, I think the next Looney Tunes cartoon is actually going to be a breakdown on the finances to pay for this purchase. But that's just me. It's like, can you say, "What's up, Doc?" Like, "Oh, our debt levels, they're way
How do
up,
you
as 7x."
manage $100 billion in debt? I mean, how does that? I mean, it's like being you lose 50 pounds, $50 billion. You're still $50 billion in debt. I mean, you're looking at years of austerity and cutbacks, and
and I read there's I think they call it a ticker clause. It's a
Yes,
25-cent per share premium for every quarter it's delayed.
past September. So ticking, not ticker, like a clock ticking. The longer the clock ticks, they got to put in
Ticking.
another quarter per share, and
right.
it's
And
already at 31 a share, and
I
and
think
a bunch of
you
little sweeteners on the side.
talked about it a few weeks ago, David. The Sprint T-Mobile merger, much smaller, about $20 billion 5 years ago. It took 2 years, 8 full quarters to close. specifically because in New York and in California, state attorney generals bonded it down in court. It also had more federal regulatory issues than this will likely face, but it took a
Yeah.
long time for it to close. If you're paying $650 million every 3 months,
Extra.
that
Yeah.
adds up, right? And you're already
Well, and it's not just them. You don't even have to go that far. Like, don't forget, right before that deal, AT&T tried to buy Warner Brothers, and it took them 2 years and had to win a DOJ, a Department of Justice lawsuit under the first Trump administration to be able to buy Time Warner. It seems like we're back right where we started. I'm feeling Back to the Future-ish, which is technically not their movie.
No, but
But
it's interesting, right? Because there's two network and technology companies, AOL and AT&T, that
right.
were making the bet that we can move this analog business into a digital future because we've got the engineers on our side and we'll figure it out. And neither were able to do it.
Right. Yeah, AOL was in the height of its hubris, but in the fading of its influence as we were shifting to new ways to connect and moving beyond the walled garden that AOL had. And back in the day, they used to charge you on a per minute basis to be connected, which was quite just like you would with the old mobile phone connections. But you're right; those were both tech first companies that couldn't segue 100-year-old Warner Brothers operation into a new generation. David Ellison is trying to do that. I'll be fascinated to see if he can do it with all of
let's
Daddy's
quote
money.
Ed Harris in Apollo 13, who was directly quoting the Houston Mission Control guy behind the scenes. So, let's look at this from the position of status. What is right with the merger? What is good about David Ellison leveraging 7 times EBITDA to buy a movie studio? Obviously, scale increases. They both combine their streaming assets, and they're well north of 100 million, approaching 200 million customers, maybe.
Yeah, I think HBO Max just ticked over 135 million. I think Paramount Plus is only about 80 million. More importantly, they're both trying to get bigger internationally. And Warner Brothers has some presence both in the cable business and otherwise internationally, particularly in Europe, and some good sports rights that are international as well that go nicely with some of what they have. I think the other thing that gets interesting from a plus size, because this technically makes it bigger than Disney or Netflix in some ways of measuring things. In a perfect world, when you didn't have to worry about your linear assets quickly losing value, as both Paramount and Warner Brothers' latest quarterly numbers last week were suggesting, both of them are kind of fading a little faster than the projections were calling for. You've got more assets. The question is, are old assets and IP going to be as valuable in the future? And the argument has been that IP, Superman, Batman, Looney, etc., The Wire or The Sopranos, is more valuable in the new future coming toward us because it's familiar and people will go to it instead of just watching free, endlessly generated AI slop. It's like, oh, I'll see what Tony Soprano's up to, or his grandson, the new mob boss, or whatever, because I'm sure that one's already being hatched. Uh, but that it will punch through, that these IP things can punch through. I don't know that's the case, but that's the argument. What do you think about that? Is that Does that make sense to you as a technologist guy trying to figure out where we're going?
I don't know. It in theory it makes sense. I mean, if you could take a property, take Bugs Bunny, and then leverage it across channels and across technologies in ways that otherwise couldn't be done without the scale, then I think you've got accretive value from the deal. If you can license global platforms like FIFA World Cup or F1 or the Olympics or the Super Bowl, if you can if you can take these global platforms and then execute them through all digital, social, and linear channels simultaneously and own rights and then redistribution rights, then I think those kinds of plays point to the value and volume. Just just bigger is better in order to do those deals.
And certainly you could anticipate, speaking of Looney Tunes, a Sora-like deal that Disney cut
Sure.
for all the Looney Tunes characters. They own those guys. Doing Sora with Bugs Bunny doesn't get any SAG-AFTRA actor bent out of shape, and you got a real good opportunity there for at least something, along with the stuff that you guys do. So some of that makes sense. Those are big libraries, particularly Warner Brothers, but Paramount's got a decent sized library. It's not ever been considered as good going back to when I was at MGM, which had a much bigger library and sold for a ridiculous amount of money.
Rewatch The Godfather this week. Haven't done it in 10 years, but
All three?
was that just the first one?
No one watches the third one. Give me a freaking break.
I was wondering,
Jeez.
did anybody watch the third one twice?
Pulled in a few times.
Well, only Coppola and maybe Sophia, but probably not even her. I'm just saying. Probably not even her. God bless her. She's turned into a pretty good little director. Just got to say, she's pretty awesome. So that acting thing wasn't working out with that, but she certainly learned some other lessons very well. So watch any three Sofia Coppola movies instead of the third Godfather, and you'll be much happier.
Yeah.
So.
So what else? We can't get to everything, but
how about Charter renames? Charter got an approval from, speaking of, because this is going to be the big one, is can they get approvals from, I guess they got preliminary DOJ approval for the big deal.
that was the FCC.
But Charter got FCC approval for buying Cox, right? Or is it FTC? I can't remember. One of the big regulatory bodies said, yeah, you can do it. But the weird thing is they're gonna go from Charter Spectrum to, they're going to rename themselves Cox, because I don't know why Cox is a better name. I don't understand this. What does it bring? It's like with a family-owned business, mostly in Atlanta and San Diego, and more known for newspapers. And it's like, okay, all right, whatever.
In the market with the consumer, it doesn't really use its name. It uses the Spectrum brand. So maybe it's not proliferate enough, well-known enough. I don't know.
Well, but Cox isn't like better. It's not like Coca-Cola, speaking of Atlanta companies. And I mean, like, we've got the Coca-Cola station. It's like, unless you're a Pepsi diehard, I mean, that's okay. Well, I'll drink to that, or something. I mean, I don't understand why they would change their name. It makes no sense.
Dating back to Tom Rutledge, she used to run the company. Now it's Chris Winfrey. Those guys are really savvy on the regulatory end. I mean, they were talking about repatriating call centers and kind of America First doctrine 10 years ago when they bought Time Warner. So they were, in terms of matching the rhetoric that you need to match to get through these government agencies as they are now, they're ideally situated.
Well, and look, cable companies as a whole, and I say this as somebody who covered government and politics for 15 years and continue to kind of watch it with a weather eye. Cable companies from the bottom up have to be politically aware and connected, because every single city has its own franchise. Every county and the unincorporated areas has its own franchise. They have to have relationships that take care of the elected officials at that level, who then graduate to be state level regulators and graduate to be
army
federal army. Yeah, and they need it. I mean, I'm not even going to knock them for it, because they got a lot of folks in community groups who want to get their public access stuff, and the local sports guys want their RSN or whatever's going to replace it, regional sports network on there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they got the political thing down, just like outdoor advertising does. It's got to deal with local politicians all the way up. So I am not shocked. I just don't know why renaming it to Cox is going to be a door opener for anybody.
Are cable companies really in the content business in 10 years, or are they just backbone last mile carriers?
Well, they're getting out of sports, right? Except in Los Angeles and New York.
They're getting out of news. They're out of sports and they're out of news. They've got to carry some.
Yeah, but Charter's not. I will say Charter's interesting, because Charter in Los Angeles, Southern California, really, it's about 1.5 million houses passed out here. They have their Charter News Charter One, News One organization, just like what they bought when they got, was it Cablevision in New York City? And so they have an always on 24-hour news service. And when you go on to Charter, it defaults to that news service. And it actually was, like, during the fires last year, it did a very solid job, I thought, of covering the fires, because they had a lot of bodies on the ground and they were live. So
they're also making a headway aggregating SVODs. They're video numbers are actually growing again. And they're marketing their video product on the front line again, along with mobile and home broadband, which hasn't happened in a couple of years. So we'll see where that goes. I think the trend in cable is to get rid of video, but Charter's arrangement with the studios is kind of novel. And so far it's produced increasing customer growth. Will everybody else try it? Will Charter stick with it? Remains to be seen.
It comes at a time when even home entertainment, even the streaming services seem to be flattening out a little bit in terms of what's going on. Dan has in the newsletter this week a couple of dribs and drabs of data points. One, home entertainment is as a whole slowing and it's maturing into a less high growth space.
Well, streaming.
Meanwhile, yeah, for streaming, yeah. And meanwhile, the home is there are fewer and fewer linear only homes. There are 35 million streaming only homes, and there's 70 some odd million with both, but only 14 million that
Million
just
linear only homes. Yeah. This is
yeah.
the Advertising Research Foundation Dash study. It's ARF Dash, it's called. It's impossibly awkward acronym, but it's influential and it places this sort of hybrid kind of
ARF
model.
dash, what you get when the dog catches the car or when Paramount catches Warner Brothers. ARF dash.
If you're an advertiser, it's kind of crucial to know what basic means of television reaches the consumer. So about
Yeah,
80
which one?
million right
Which
now
yeah.
is sort of a universal fit. So I did want to talk about this Anthropic thing before we got out of here. I know we're kind of pressed for time, and we've got an AI technologist on the horn with us, so I thought it was a good opportunity. Long story short, Anthropic has been sort of early on, a key AI contractor for the federal government. Specifically, they provided elements of Claude for the Defense Department. It was used in the abduction of Maduro a couple of months ago in Venezuela, but it's fallen out of favor with Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump because they don't want their technology to be used for mass surveillance, and they don't want it to be used in the sense that a machine can dictate automated firing of weapons. Melted down last week. Hegseth and Trump kicked Anthropic out of the government and hired OpenAI, ostensibly for terms that Anthropic and Dario Amodei had asked for all along. Anthropic is now a woke company full of radical, unhinged leftists, according to our president. Is this a death knell for the one AI company that sort of seems to have a conscience and a forward-looking, kind of rational safety looking lens on this very controversial technology? What will happen to Anthropic? What will happen next, I guess?
Well, it's the ethics of appropriate use of AI is going to be the topic of a generation. So I would say to your audience, get used to these stories because it is complex and it will change, weekly, daily. There will be new challenges to the ethical use of AI. And it's an area that will be hard for our society to draw good precedent from. It's not like we have examples to draw from that can really help us understand what to do in this case. They're very, very loose analogs that can be used and none tight. So there's no societal base of understanding what right means and what wrong means. We're just stuck. And add to that, this almost impossible to understand, like impossible to really conceptualize what is AI really? What is a model really? Your general population is just never really going to get a handle on that. And so we're going to have to rely on experts and leadership to resolve it, which brings you to the human element applied against this very complex ethical and technical issue. And the human element is what makes it good drama and interesting for cable news channels. But this recent dust up with Anthropic, I think, is not even going to be considered a speed bump in the fullness of time. They've they were willing to accept 98 or 99% of the use cases for their model in just these two very specific and hard to argue against restrictions for whatever reason. Blew up people's brains and emotions kicked in, and away we go. The next day, we hear about OpenAI closing the deal with those same restrictions in, which is good. So I would say, okay, so what seemed to be reasonable and appropriate restrictions did get applied. In the end, Anthropic took it on the chin for being the first guys to ask. but they'll get back.
But it's worth pointing out this particular deal, and we'll see how it spins out. It's going to take months and months to unwind what they have relationships across all of government that have now been banned by Trump. The $200 million contract is more money than either Dan or I make in a week. Hard to believe in journalism because it's so lucrative these days, but it is a tiny, tiny amount compared to the market cap or the estimated market cap of Anthropic, which is several $100 billion, maybe
The
$1 trillion.
restriction won't, the restriction won't stick. It's not like they're going
It
to
won't
lose
stick.
that money. No, it can't
Right.
possibly stick. It won't
Right.
stick.
I think it's actually, and this is the funny part, this Barbara Streisand effect when you
Yeah.
try to make something look bad and all you do is bring more attention to it, because what it will do is help differentiate them from everybody else exactly the way they want to be differentiated from everybody else, right?
Well,
It's
that's just
like,
the opposite.
thank you for making our
feels
marketing argument. I
Yeah.
appreciate
it
it,
feels like it commoditizes the whole business. I'm like, oh, just we don't want Claude. We'll just take Chat GPT. Like they're all, are they that interchangeable? I mean, they're
No,
not that
no,
similar.
no, they're not. They're not interchangeable. They have some
Not at
overlap.
all.
They have
Yeah.
some overlap, but yeah, they don't do all the same things in the same way as well as each other.
And some are better at one thing and some are better at another thing. And that changes on about a 6-month basis, I think, pretty substantially, it feels like.
Someday next week, we'll hear that that Anthropic was the second or third most searched word term on Google because nobody knew who Anthropic was a week ago.
Well, Gemini will report that, right?
There you
So
go. There you go.
Gemini search wrap up report that. Anyway, I think it's probably a really good place to leave this. Chris Keevill of Versos AI. Thank you so much for telling us a little bit about what you're doing to help CuriosityStream unleash a new stream of revenue. I find that really fascinating stuff. I'm David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT and Next TMT Talks with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel. You can subscribe free to our weekly newsletter, which arrives in your mailbox on Monday mornings, full of fun stuff at nexttmt.com. You can also follow us, like, share, subscribe, all those other good things. Comment. We take comments. God knows I've heard plenty of them over the years. All of our podcasts, this podcast on YouTube, and audio versions are on Apple and on Spotify. And apparently now that Apple's going to be adding video, I guess we'll be on video over there too. Anyway, with all that, thank you so much. Have a great week. We look forward to more cool news and interesting people like Chris Keevill of Versos to talk in the future. Thanks, everybody.